Welcome to Boschendal Wine Estates, and if you think it all looks rather familiar, there's a pretty good chance you follow Joanne Strauss on Instagram, because together with people like Sia Colisi, they've been recent visitors out to the estate, and the pictures they show are fabulous. Appropriate then that Joanne Strauss is our guest this week on Boschendal the Nicholas Red Blazer series, as we talk to entrepreneurs from different walks in life, find out just how difficult their journeys have been, what they've learnt along the way, and how they've managed to get things just about right. Joanne joins me along with another supermodel, Maponyane, my regular co-host, along with a glass or two of the Nicholas, the journey of Joanne Strauss. Hello, welcome to the wine cellar at Ellerman House, one of my favourite places to be. I frequently try and get myself locked in here. No luck, sadly, but I dream of it one day. If I can't be locked in it though, the next best thing is hanging out with two very good friends of mine. One of them, as usual, is Maponyane for Boschendal the Nicholas Red Blazer series. The other is someone both Maps and I have spent a great deal of time with, usually trying not to let on that we're both hopelessly smitten by our sharing stages and sharing laughter, which we always do, Joanne Strauss.
We always have fun, and I mean, here we're sitting in this incredible venue, and I'm sitting with two gorgeous guys. How lucky am I? I mean, just an average day in my life, huh?
You're very lucky. You are
very lucky, very lucky.
You're also incredibly successful. You have a journey to share with us from your Miss South Africa days that's taken all manner of avenues, and you've done over the course of, dare I say it, 2 decades. So much really cool stuff. But before we look at that journey, let's go right back to Miss South Africa, not the moment when you got your crown, the world was before you, but fast forward, say a year or so after that, Miss South Africa settled in, you've realised you've got this incredible platform, now you have to turn it into something. How did that process work?
I think, Dan, for me, Miss South Africa was an incredible stepping stone, and it sort of launches your career and it fast tracks a lot of things that you intended to do from the start, but it does fast track things. And so for me, I think my Miss South Africa year was a great year of networking, getting to know incredible people, also getting to know who I wanted to work with afterwards, and sort of setting all those steps in motion. For me, I was very, very lucky to build up a great network. But I also think when it comes to networking, a lot of young people think networking comes to handing over your card or exchanging usernames or handles and like, oh, I'll slip into your DMs. Networking also means that you have to think what you can offer to the other person in terms of business and think of reciprocal ways to benefit each other's businesses. So I met incredible business partners, some of whom I still work with to this day. So that was sort of the big, I would say, foundation of my career, is that I invested in good relationships and that I made sure that my word was always my word. I think to me, my biggest asset has been my reputation. And to me, I think that's something that I try to also instill, a value I try to instill in my children, is when you make a promise you keep. So that sort of catapulted me into where I am now.
As far as Miss South Africa goes though, Joanne, yourself and women such as Basitsana Khumalo have really, really utilized that platform so well. And you speak about how it fast-tracked your whole career. Is that what you were looking to do before Miss South Africa, everything that you've ended up doing? Or was it the natural progression from how you managed to beautifully frame and package yourself as now Joanne Strauss?
So funny, because my kids also ask sometimes, who's this Joanne Strauss? Because they know me just as mom. So I also laugh because this brand sometimes feels as if she lives apart from me in a weird way, because Miss South Africa for me started 20 years ago. It did. I mean, for incredible women like Bassi, there's so many amazing doctors also that have come out of Miss South Africa and who continue to do such incredible work in their communities. Miss South Africa absolutely was a wonderful launching pad. But I also think, if I think back now, I was a student at Stellenbosch University. I was initially going to study medicine, and then I'd had the privilege of attending this youth leadership conference, and Koos Bekker was one of the guests there. In fact, it was the conference that he had hosted. And the people that I met there, they ended up having a huge impact on my career. Koos then took me on a tour of Media 24 and said, had I ever considered working in media as an industry? And as a young woman of color, if you were clever, you became a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. Nobody really knew what an entrepreneur was. I mean, an entrepreneur was something that you'd maybe read the word in a book and you didn't quite know, is it the entrepreneur? What you know, it wasn't a word that was used in conversation in my family. And from there, the connections that I made and the people that I made were really incredible. It did fast forward things. And then 20 years later, I sit on the board with Koos at Media 24. So yeah, it definitely fast-tracked things.
We tend to think of the skill set, or certainly did for a while, the skill set of a beauty queen, of a pageant queen. You're very good at cutting ribbons to open buildings.
Absolutely.
And talking about
World
rainforests.
peace, save the dolphins.
Save the planet.
Yes, yes.
Clearly there is far more to it. You were head girl at school, you were studying already, and we've seen a lot of Miss South Africas over the last decade go into spaces that maybe traditionally and possibly wrongly we didn't associate with the beauty pageant area. What was the skill set that you took out of that and then launched into your first foray of business and entrepreneurship?
I didn't start business immediately. I think what I did is I hosted a lot of events, and I sort of would say polished my skill at public speaking and presentations, etc. I then actually went and finished 2 years of my MBA. I realized at that point in time, I was in my late 20s when I did my MBA, or did half of my MBA, but I realized then that the business school that I attended, they were focused on creating employees, not employers. It wasn't really focused on entrepreneurship. And I think that's also changed a lot in terms of education and formal education over the last few years. But for me, I knew that there was something that I wanted to do that was more than wearing a sash and proclaiming world peace. But I knew that I had to spend time learning the ropes, getting to know people, also observing other people. And I think that's the important thing as well. As a student, you go to university, and in your first year, you think you know everything. And then by your final year, you realize you know nothing. That was my journey with Miss South Africa as well, as I thought I was this wise 19-year-old. And then by the end of it, I realized that the best gift that Miss South Africa gave me was the opportunity to observe and to network and to learn from incredible people who I was then able to interact with. So yeah, it really was a wonderful way for me to just to learn and to listen. I think that's the other thing. We live in this era or this time where people are so quick to speak, and I'm doing it right now, but people love speaking. I love the saying, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio. To me, to learn is the best gift. To be open to things out there, that's the best gift. And to have time, quality time.
Well, let's speak about that learning. I mean, you've had an amazing, amazing journey. How much have you learned? What are some of those key lessons you've learned of being an entrepreneur, especially navigating spaces where I see that are quite male-dominated, apart from the beauty world, male-dominated that you see yourself in and you comfortably navigate yourself in, and somehow really remove all of that and are someone that is able to, I guess, assert yourself and garner that attention?
I've learned from incredible female leaders and male leaders. I think often when one's in Women's Month, it's this whole, I'm a woman, hear me roar, which is fantastic. But one should also take cognizance of the fact that there are so many incredible men who have played a huge supportive role in my career. One of my university lecturers, Professor Rachel Jafta, I've learned from her that one doesn't have to sacrifice your femininity to be a strong leader. One doesn't have to be a harsh, loud leader to be an effective one. And that, again, is something that I've observed in the board at Media 24, watching her as chairperson with her work with Naspers as well, is she is a very strong leader, but that does not mean that you have to be dominating, arrogant, loud. The other lessons that I've also learned is that one has to be agile. I've always said that as a small business versus, say, a big corporate, you're like a canoe and you can navigate when there are different streams approaching, etc. But as a big ship, as a cruise line, it's a little bit hard to change tack. So the last 20 months have also taught me that as a small business, it's easier to go, okay, fine, this isn't working, and let's do something now. Yeah. Even if it means fail fast, but that's the big thing, is you've got to be effective with your time. And having 4 kids, I've realized that being effective with my time, that's one of the big lessons that I'm constantly striving to learn more and more about.
it comes across as a made-for-Hollywood success story. This kid who used to travel to school by train somehow becomes head girl, becomes Miss South Africa, hangs out with Koos Bekker, gets onto all of these boards, and a lot of it is a fairy tale. And I'm sure there are times when you pitch yourself a little, but there will also, I've got no doubt, have been times when you thought, what am I doing here? I'm not made for this. I'm so out of my depth. Maps and I have been there many times ourselves. What were some of those moments? How did you deal with those moments?
Absolutely. I think Maps and Dan, there's this imposter syndrome, and I actually have goosebumps when I think about it, because during my Miss South Africa year as well, I would sit there sometimes and you sort of in your session, you know, people have this idea of who you are, and I often felt, but I'm not that girl. And learning to be okay with who you are and realize that you're in that position because of who you are, not striving to be somebody else or like somebody else. I love the saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. I've been very, very lucky, but I never take my luck for granted, and I never take for granted where I am. And so to me, that's why it's so important to help others. I mean, even the people that I work with, everyone has to have a side hustle. In my house, even if you're working, even if you're looking after my kids, you've got to have a side hustle. You've got to have your own small business that you're striving to make your children's lives better, and where you're teaching your kids as well about what running a business is about. But
I've seen your kids selling stuff outside.
They do. In fact, they're probably out here now trying to sell mommy's autograph now, and they don't even know what mommy does. But yeah, it's very cute. My son, the tooth fairy, he's 7, and the tooth fairy brought him pounds. I actually just had like 10 pounds that were lying in the house. So I thought, okay, it's going to be less effort to give him that. And I gave him the 10 pounds, and he went and researched the exchange rate, also how much interest he would get. He came asking me about compound interest, about, it's quite impressive for a 7-year-old. But that to me is a big thing. In my house, we never grew up speaking about money because it was sort of considered rude to speak about money. To me, it's such an important thing that we teach our children what money is, and that money doesn't buy happiness, but it is a great tool to use to live a good quality of life.
£10, something that probably will get you about 1/10 of a full tank these days.
Yes, luckily he's not driving too far yet.
But I think he should.
He's got an electric car. He's got an electric car, so yeah.
Whenever we have conversations, we always end up navigating to empowerment, and empowerment is something that's so important to you. Why is it so important?
Maps, one of my favorite sayings is, a candle loses none of its light by lighting another candle. And to me, I've had so many candles who've helped me in my career. And unless I actually use my success or whatever one would call it, but unless I use that to empower others, then it's quite an empty feeling. And I've just been inspired by so many young people and so many old people as well. I actually had, she also loves red wine. I had a glass of wine with Gwen Fagan, who is this phenomenal architect. She and her husband, and bless his heart, Harvey, passed on a few months ago in September of last year. They actually were involved in the renovation of Boschendal as well. But she's 97. She goes to work every day. She walks up the steepest staircase, over 100 steps. She has 4 children. She is absolutely phenomenal. She wrote this incredible book on roses, which I actually saw in Cottage 1682 at Boschendal as well. To me, you never stop hustling. You never stop learning. You always are looking for I wouldn't say the God in other people, but you look for the light in others. And that's been an incredible thing for me, is that my mom instilled that in me. Each one has something to teach you. I learned so much from, I call her the other mother of my children. And it's interesting, when we travel together, people always assume that we're a couple because nobody's ever seen my husband. But
Us included.
Yes, my husband is this enigma. But the lady who helps me and my husband to raise our children, she's from Zimbabwe. She is just such a phenomenal, elegant, wise woman. And I learned from Gwen, I learned from her, I learned from a 16-year-old intern that I've had. I learn from all the people around me, including you guys. I mean, sometimes I'm like, really? But I learn a lot from people around me, and I'm grateful.
Dan, to give you a hint, whenever I visit Joanne and see her kids, I say, who's Maponyane?
Oh dear, the life of Johann Strauss is a colourful one. It includes not just an unspecified number of children, but also a wonderful German doctor who I have actually met, and it speaks to the international nature of Johann, just as the wine we have today, the Nicholas, has got an international following. Let's jump over to Jacques in the cellar at Boschendal. Jacques, you produce this fabulous wine. It's very popular here in South Africa. Talk to us about the style of wine that you have in a global context. Is this wine that's finding favour right around the world, and are you finding people in different countries really enjoying a specific type of South African wine?
Yes, so making wine for the international market. In fact, Dan, gone is the days that you're just making wine just for locally. Everything that we do, all the benchmarking that we do is also for the international market as well, always keeping that in mind. If you just have a look at the philosophy of Boschendal making wine, it's always about being classic and elegant, that real French style of making wine, being true to style, making balanced wines. Gone is the days where it's over extracted. It's all trying to be quite classic and seamless. So obviously Nicholas is right in that alley. I always say it's my James Bond wine. So it's really that suit and tie type of wine, and it's really amazing. It's well received overseas. Of course, the European market has taken it quite well, and they love it. So yeah, we've had some really good results with Nicholas, and we feel very blessed. And like I said, we often do benchmarks against overseas wines to see where we are at, and with the competition exporting to various countries. So it's important to us.
Well, thank you, Jacques, not just for some vision on the world of wine from a South African point of departure, but also for some fabulous wine we have here, which is the Nicholas, which we toast you with, Johann, for being a wonderful guest and a great friend to us both. And while we drink wine that, as Jacques says, is heading out beyond South Africa's borders, so it's something I know that all three of us love, the opportunity to explore and to adventure and to travel around the world. One of the things that my first big trip as a 16-year-old living in Australia as an exchange student did to me was broaden those horizons and make me realise just how much there was to the world. What aspect as international travel and working around the world brought back to day-to-day life and how you run your businesses here in South Africa?
You know, the first person in my family to actually have a legitimate stamp in their passport, my parents had, or my dad had gone to Namibia before, but I was the first person to actually go overseas. You know, like in my family, it's a big thing. Did you go overseas?
And that wasn't a trip to Seal Island?
No, it wasn't a trip to Seal Island or to Robben Island. So for my 18th birthday, I'll never forget, my dad and my mom took my brother and I to Home Affairs in Belleville to go and get our passports. We had no prospects of traveling.
An adventure of its own.
An adventure of its own to go to. I mean, Home Affairs. And my dad said to me, as he presented my passport to me, couple of weeks later, months maybe, but yes. But he said to me, "The world is your oyster." And I didn't quite understand what he meant. But then I had a chance to travel at 19 for Miss South Africa. And I went to Puerto Rico, to Miss Universe, you know, to also proclaim world peace there. And it was such an eye-opener, because the more you travel, the more you realize how different everyone is and how the same we also are. So there are so many things. We all want the same things for our kids, for our families, for ourselves. And it's been such an eye-opening experience to be able to experience the world. Ukuhamba kukubona. To travel is to see. It's such a beautiful expression. And for my children to be able to also experience the world and travel with us. I'm a big believer in traveling with the kids. I think I took our second and our first to Fashion Week in Berlin for their 4th month birthdays. So they sat front row at Fashion Week, me actually with baby, and earphones on, listening to punk music as they modeled. I really think it is such a privilege to be able to travel, and to be able to travel with young people and see the world through their eyes.
Well, that's worth toasting to.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. Cheers.
So proclaiming world peace is not something you directly do, but you try and do it in different ways, where you try and paint this vision and achieve this vision that you have for yourself on a daily basis. You're dressed like a dove today.
La colombe.
What is world peace in the context of what does Joanne see for herself as the serenity and peace that you want for your life looking back?
Very good question. I think when it comes to the world peace that I'm trying to proclaim in my way, it's understanding that I try to also instill that in my kids. I mean, of course, it's a very colorful household. It's a very busy household. But that one always tries to understand other people. My husband always says, always put yourself in the other person's shoes. And obviously my shoes are a little bit spikier than my husband's shoes, but it does make a huge difference when you just try to imagine what somebody else is feeling, or you just try to understand an argument from their perspective. So we try and instill that in our kids. And also when it comes to international travel, I mean, it's such a privilege to be able to work with my clients across the world. So for example, I'm spending time now in Dubai with a big amateur golf tournament that I'm hosting. Also then to spend some time in Germany. The cultures are absolutely different, but to come from a place of understanding and respect, everything starts with respect. And whether it's children, I also teach my kids that they need to respect others, but not just elders. There needs to be a mutual respect. And that is my sort of way of trying to proclaim world peace in a very small way that usually, or hopefully, has a ripple effect.
You've done a great job with that, Nicholl.
I know, world peace on him. I'm still working on him every day. I mean, this is a big work in progress. Totally. Are we finishing each other's sentences? Dan and I sandwiches. Okay, well, there we go. Even a frozen milk. No, there we go. You'll always be my Olaf.
I've certainly got the shape for it. Thank you, Joanne. You're effectively speaking of empathy, and it is something that we need more of in the world, and it is something we love to see, but it's very valuable. It's not something you just do because it's a nice thing to do. It's a really strong asset in terms of leadership, in terms of running a business. When you look at the array of spaces you now occupy, what for you defines your ability to most successfully not just be part of these businesses, but contribute more than just the flashing smile and the big name, to really buy into them and make a difference?
I always like to know the why. When it comes to small businesses, when it comes to, for example, I sit on the advisory board of the Stellenbosch Business School, and they've got this incredible small business academy. And we're talking from a car wash in Nyanga to, I mean, it's literally such a diverse range of companies which they are trying to empower and inspire. To me, I love finding out from people, why are they doing what they do? What is their why? What is the intent behind what they do? And to actually spend time listening and learning from people, I think that to me is hopefully what I can bring to the party, or what I try to bring to the party when it comes to supporting other people's businesses. The empathy, the listening, and then when it comes to giving advice, to also be able to accept advice at the same time. My husband always says to me, I mean, especially in a world of social media where we spend more time analyzing the criticism of strangers than the compliments of people who actually know us. We live in this time of social media where people are spending money they don't have on things they don't need to impress people they don't know. I don't even know whose quote that is, but that just stuck with me, because it's this world where we're trying to impress strangers. But if you actually look inside and you look at your why you are doing what you do, why you are trying to establish a successful business, that to me, when you find that in yourself and in other people, it makes it so much easier to navigate the sometimes tumultuous oceans of business.
You've also grown an incredible knack to be able to identify and find that in many other young entrepreneurs and businesses. And here on the Red Blazers series, we have a beautiful part of the show where we allow you to, with of course courtesy of Boschendal, allow you to donate 10,000 Rand to any upcoming business that you think may be someone that you're wanting to back, any upcoming entrepreneur that you want to back and support, and give them a bit of a boost.
There is a phenomenal young lady who's been working with me and my family for the last year, and she kind of put her business on pause to help me run my business in these crazy times. And so her business is called Flourish. It's a business where she does incredible sort of personalized bouquets that she goes and drops off, and she really does an amazing work, because she literally spreads happiness. So I'd love to donate to Layla of Flourish. my 10,000 Rand. Thank you for helping me be a little blesser, guardian angel. So yeah, I think that's phenomenal that you guys are making this happen, and thank you to Boschendal.
Well, I think it's a blooming good choice.
It's a great choice. Oddly enough, Layla's the same name that your travel agent has too, but that's nothing altogether.
Spreading happiness across the world.
Joanne, what I love about you is that you sit in a broadly similar space to myself and Maps. We know just how busy you are, what the demands are, and yet you still always seem to combine this extraordinary array of entrepreneurial endeavours with being the most awesome mum to however many kids it is at the moment. And that sense of balance is something I admire greatly about you. And coupled with being authentic and gorgeous, and not possibly 41.
Almost.
It's been an absolute delight to have you on the show, so thank you.
Maps, Dan, this is always a pleasure chatting to you guys, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely wonderful to have you, and thank you so much for your time. Dangerous territory there, going into the age, but I know that you'll be happy to see me again when we meet, and good luck to you, Dan. Thank you very much.
And on that particular social faux pas, we say goodbye, and we bring great news of a young woman who's making a difference, bringing happiness, and now has the added support via Joanne of that 10,000 Rand from Boschendal. This has been Boschendal, the Nicholas Red Blazer series with myself, Dan Nicholl, Maps Maponyane, and our very special guest, Joanne Strauss. I think both Maps and I could confirm with utter conviction she's still absolutely delightful as ever.